installation, founded as a curatorial practice, but we are developing more into a double practice where we have cultural work, we make exhibitions, publications, organize seminars, lectures, and so on. But besides that, we all start more and more to do studies and consultancy, and we are also involved in we accompany governments, communal, regional, national governments with their architecture and urban planning processes. I'm going to talk today in preparation of workshops, but in fact it's also more or less a lecture on a project we have been doing last year. First, because we were selected as curator of the Belgian pavilion at the Architectural Biennial in Venice, where we responded to a call for projects within the topic of, with a suggested topic, how we can deal with Flanders as a region, as a cross-border, trans-European territory. Later on, we did the exhibition in Venice. We copied it, or we made a remake in Antwerp. And during that exhibition, we also organized workshops and debates and a conference, symposium on the topic of the ambition of the territory, Flanders as a design project. Oops, what's going on? No? I know what's happening. That's better. The question that was asked, you are all planners, so you must have already noticed that it's a very general, very complex issue, how you can present the future of a whole territory within the complex situation in which urban planning, urbanism and architecture are these days. There's a complex field of things that are going on. And first we were very, very confused about how to respond to that question, and we composed a very confusing team, because we thought the only thing that we can do is gather people that are in their practice are dealing with this notion of urban rural territory in their own practice, and we composed a team together with a Dutch cartographer, Joost Grotens, who makes urban atlases, with an urbanist practice, Grau, from Paris, with architects, very internationally renowned architects from Ghent, De Velde, Vink, Tailleux, and with an artist, a drawer, let's say, somebody who's drawing, who's with his art reacting on societal issues by drawing. So we gathered a team of 5 very, very different people who are here they are, who are all of them trying to understand and to develop innovative models how to deal with our spatial environment, but by different means, from cartography to art. I will try to go a little bit quicker. This is to be able to say more on 2 of the project that has been developed by Grau, because they are more fitting into the topic of the surroundings that you are visiting today and of the topic of pure hubs. But we made this exhibition in Venice. Here you see some pictures of how the artist, Ante Timmermans, how he reacted with very, very interesting, but not always easy to understand drawings on how he sees the European reality. For instance, let's see, on the right, there's a kind of a representation of the Disneyfication of our urban reality, like how do you call that? Disneyland. So in the pavilion, the only thing that we could do was not pretend to bring the project for Flanders, because that's impossible. We only had 6 months to prepare it. The only thing that we could do was try to draw and redraw what we saw and how we thought that it could be represented in another way to make people better understand this Flemish condition. So we gathered in the exhibition space drawings and one model and some booklets, and that's it. Come back to that. Another room of Ante Timmermans as artist responding on the drawings. But now to come to the point. As your professor already introduced, Flanders is quite different than England and than other territories in the world, especially because it has a very weird tradition of urban planning. Let's say there was almost none. Everything is very dispersed, very chaotic, very spread out, organized, horizontally organized and fragmented. This is an example that I want to show. These are all the lots that are available for extension of housing on a certain scale. We do the zoom out, and it's extremely. It looks like a disease, but it's extremely difficult to know where we are. Of course, for you, that I can understand, but for me, for people who are urban planners in Flanders, even they could not say where this zoom is taken, based on all the housing extension areas in Flanders. This is Flanders, the northern part of Belgium, Brussels in the middle. And this is all these housing extension areas together with the existing empty plots in housing areas. So this is, if we are attending 1 million new people for 2050, if nothing would happen, all these people would build houses in these red spots. And we could say that this would evolve into one big soup, one big mess. Again, a zoom, still we don't know where we are. And what's very important to state now, today, is that only after we added the waterways and the open space and the nature and the agricultural zones, suddenly we start to find out that we are looking at Antwerp. For people who know the area, from this side, slide on, they can understand where we are. So this is the empty housing plots, extension zones, plus the built area. You see this fragmented linear development all over the place, and actual urban planning policy in Flanders will make it even worse. You must already know that this kind of urban structure doesn't seem extremely sustainable at first sight, because you have a lot of mobility issues, a lot of infrastructure need to be built to get your car in front of your house, a lot of also for other equipment. We need to pay as a community a lot of infrastructure cost for quite low dense, very dispersed area. Because you come from abroad, I had a couple of pictures that we ordered, let's say, from a Dutch photographer, Diewertje Komen, who made a tour in Flanders and tried to frame the contact zone between this dispersed urban reality and the open space. For instance, this is very typical Flemish situation. It's a row house in the middle of nowhere with a little garden in front and a garden in the back, waiting for another row house that will probably never come. And that's very particular for Flanders because ever since Belgium and Flanders exist, there's a tradition of individual ownership. And everybody bought, for economic reasons, a very small parcel. And then they had the contact with the street and with the countryside in the back. But you never know that you can sell the plot next to it for somebody else for a second house. So everything is organized like this. But of course, more and more globalization is having its influence on our territory too, like near the harbor of Antwerp, containers. This is a typical housing settlement as built by investors, promoters, building firms. This is a typical example of the relation between a lot of railway infrastructure, a lot of normal car infrastructure, the infrastructure of waterways, some nature. So it's a very fragmented situation. This is in Sint-Katelijne-Waver. It's in the area between Brussels and Antwerp, where we are focusing on today. And yeah, you see that the glasshouse industry or glasshouse agriculture is now more and more also an area where people come and live and they build their own houses in the countryside, but at the same time it's very close to very urban development. Typical Belgian infrastructure with a square farmstead on the right, some not very well defined, not very well planned and organized placement of windmills, industry, and that's also a very typical juxtaposition of commerce, housing, some farming next to a railway and so on. The highway, sorry. Another confrontation of this is the border. This is the border of Brussels, where they are investing in a very big. How to say, a regional express network, so a regional train network, to bring people. First, they all wanted to be out of the city, so they bought themselves a little house in the countryside. But then, of course, they noticed that driving with their car to their work in the city, it takes 1 hour and a half in the morning, 1 hour and a half in the evening. So they prefer a better public transport system to get the people who live inside the city to work. And this big infrastructure is very much predicting the form, the figure, the urban figure of this metropolitan area around Brussels. And you see the confrontation of that with leftovers of agriculture, with a farm, with open space, with nature. And I can tell you that the problem is that nobody is talking about these places. Nobody is dealing with that. Urbanists are dealing with the compact urban city. And a lot of other organizations are working on the structuring and the organization of the nature, of housing, of let's say of agricultural zones, of industry zones, and everybody is working in its own zone, but nobody is dealing with the contact fields of all these functions and of the urban and the rural. Besides pure hubs, of course. So what are the challenges? And I'm afraid that I have to hurry a little bit. So we are one of the less sustainable. We have the biggest ecological footprint of the world. We're the sixth. Still, a lot of people say in press that we have lots of space to build on. Our energy bill is one of the most expensive in Europe. Nobody seems to care or seems to try to find out how we can deal with that. We need a lot of more worldwide. We need a lot of more agriculture zones. But here in Flanders, everybody's saying that this agriculture is maybe not our future, and so on. The architects, Dudal and Tailleux, what they did is they found this is not a project of them. This is not architecture. It's an entrepreneur. Next to the highway, I did show you before. It's an entrepreneur that bought a farm next to the highway, and he started a painting firm, a painting factory on his own in the shed. And then he was very successful, and he built a big box next to his house, next to his old farm. He was even more successful, and he broke down his farm and he rebuilt it in the same style, typical Flemish farm, fermette style. And then he was even more successful. He built a bigger office hall on his plot. He also built a swimming pool and place for the children to play. And he lives and he works on the same spot. In planning, this is for planners, this is horror. Because you have to have industry zone, nature zone, working zone, housing zone, and so on. But these architects stayed with this project. They made a model of this situation as it was an architectural project, even when it was no architect involved at all. Just to state that instead of thinking everything in several zones, housing, industry, nature, agriculture, we should try, and this is probably, yeah, it's okay. This is, he says that combining functions and sharing space and bringing work and housing more closer one to each other is probably a very interesting model to think about. Not something to copy-paste, not something to take as an architectural model with a big A, but probably it's more close to reality than what we publish in architectural venues, or what we publish in architectural books as architecture. And so they developed also a way how this, they called it a modern composition, like the contemporary square farmstead, where and they built a kind of extrapolation if you would continue doing as this little entrepreneur in Flanders did for his own plot, if you would develop that as a model along a highway. Important is that the cartographer before, this is Antwerp-Brussels in his Metropolitan Atlas, he represented Flanders as such, Antwerp, Brussels, and some spots in between. We said in one of our first workshops, this is not what Flanders is. And he started developing a graphic language to deal with this fragmented, dispersed reality. And he came with this method of trying to find out what was the icon that fits the best to every square of 50 by 50 meters of a part of Flanders. And he developed, like, you have housing with nature, housing with agriculture, cows, horses, glass houses, and so on. So he developed this kind of interactive, not really interactive, but more sensitive cartography of whole Flanders, not whole Flanders, part of it, but how we can understand Flanders much more as a soup of functions, as a horizontal fragmented area, rather than a clear distinction between compact cities and open space. So this was presented as a wallpaper in the Belgian pavilion. Important for your study, for the workshop today, and for Pure Hubs as a niche, as a topic, is that the urbanists from Grau in Paris, they developed a strategy for two areas in Flanders. One area in the south of Limburg, which is at the very east. You can maybe show it. So there, you see it in Belgium. I don't have a pointer. Maybe is it a pointer? Oops. It's not a pointer. Doesn't matter. But you see there, it's in the east, and they developed a strategy for this area where they tried to think how can the agricultural activity, there's a lot of nature still there, there's a lot of recreation, cycling, walking, visiting, it's a very touristic area, and the red is the very dispersed urban structure. So they try to find out how these two could be seen as one entity, as a whole, and how the structure of the open space and the structure of recreation space and agriculture space could help making the settlement space or the housing space, the urban space, how this could structure that more and make it more dense and sustainable area. So they did not say that all these linear developments, that they were bad. They said maybe at some points we can even strengthen that and create some zones of experimentation where new farms, economic activities, leisure, and so on can be grouped in a kind of a snake in the countryside. Second concept is a little bit like where we are now, is a little bit like Pure Hubs, but much bigger, and a lot of these in one area. It's the big square, where they see it as a kind of a hub, where two lines of urban development have a through, have a hole. There they bring in a hub of urbanity, where functions for agriculture. For instance, there's a fruit industry there, they have a lot of seasonal workers. That could be hotel infrastructure or sleeping infrastructure for the seasonal workers, and also for tourists. This could also serve for equipment to make this urban developments, to give them equipment like schools, kindergartens and commerces, and to bring, by this, to give platforms, physical architectural platforms, to make agriculture, recreational and urban developments, bring them together, share space, get to know each other better, and structure from there the territory surrounding them. But in another zone, I will come back to the overview, on the bottom they suggest that there is the most, is the best ground, the best territory for agriculture. There they suggest that it would be an experimentation zone for intensification and upscaling of agriculture. So it means that where now in Flanders everything, all the urban planning rules are the same for everybody, here they want to state that we should set up some directions, some to stress on some functions in some areas, to bring more diversity in the territory and to make what is already there, what is the most interesting development for a part of Flanders, give it a go and let it develop in the most efficient way. And here, for instance, housing would be restricted, and agriculture can develop at full charge. A second project they set up is, just check the time, running late. A second project they did was between Antwerp and Brussels, and Antwerp on top, Brussels down, and in between they develop a concept of green lobs, of green entities, and they bring them with ecological corridors in contact one with each other. So instead of, this is the area where we are now, is in the middle. We are almost exactly in the middle of this drawing, Brussels, Antwerp, and the red is the urban development. So it's very hard to explain to foreigners like you that this is 3 different cities and some smaller cities and a lot of open space, which it isn't. It's one urban system, it's one metropolitan area, it's one entity, it's one city. But instead of denying this situation and let this urban development further become more complex and chaotic and become more soup, they say let us defend by putting together agriculture zones and nature zones in like these blobs. Let them be protected for further development, and let us densify the urban area in between. So the quality of life of people who live there will be bigger because they will live next to a big open spot, and we can be more sustainable because we can densify and can put more people on less territory. Some other thoughts. So this is this concept of the lob, where agriculture activity, economic activity, new farms become one zone with nature, and the urban development is only focusing on what is left and can be densified. Second idea they bring in is in the north, more towards Antwerp. There's a lot of glasshouse agriculture, glasshouse industry, and they suggest there that there would be more sharing between the glass houses and the housing settlements. For instance, these glass houses, they gather a lot of energy, a lot of warmth, a lot of heat, and it's very easy to use this heat to heat the houses, but nobody is doing it. So we should bring systems of heating housing by using the heat that is already there, rather than consuming more energy, which is more and more expensive. So let this glass house development structure the housing development instead of the other way around. Here in the north of Brussels, they suggest that agricultural activity and industrial activity, that they would collaborate better. For instance, in developing in industrial areas, developing agricultural activity, farming on the rooftops, for instance, in which you can easily also set up chains of exchange of heat and energy, and you can even give the CO2 from that is going out of the industry, can be used immediately to nourish the plants. So you can bring innovative ways of combining industry and agriculture into these places, rather than both of them consuming more space, which we don't have anymore. Of course, this is also because the industry is more and more clean. 50 years ago, industry, we have to kick it out of the cities because it was polluting. And more industry is clean and can be combined with other functions. We ourselves, yeah, but it's okay. It's okay. I'm almost there. But just our architecture workroom as a think tank, we developed also one concept for the whole of the region. Historically, this region has always been very much different than Paris and London, which are more centralized metropolises. We are a network of small, middle scale and some bigger cities who were related to each other by commercial network. So depending on each other also. You have Brussels, Antwerp, Ghent, Bruges, Lille. And this is a little bit the three rivers, the Scheldt, the Rhine, the Meuse and the Scheldt, who defined this historical network of cities, together with an old Roman road the other side. So we said it is not like this, that suburbia took over the place only since a couple of decades. We have been a horizontal organized urban reality ever since the Middle Ages. So there where you see all over the world people from agricultural zones move into urban, into cities, into urban networks. Here in Europe, or especially this part of Europe, it has already been like that since the Middle Ages. And the problem is, if we look towards this territory, Belgium, Holland, Germany, as a cluster of compact cities, we are making a big mistake, because we are concentrating all the problems but also all the solutions of the urban into the big cities. And it's a very explosive cocktail. If we don't deal with urban issues outside the compact cities, we are denying reality. spreading out everything, that's another scenario we developed. Spreading out everything all over the place is not a good solution neither, because it is not sustainable at all. So we suggested to start, and I introduced it already a little bit, is to make areas, metropolitan zones, and to start from the potential of these different areas in this European part, and start developing concepts, urban planning concepts that are that fits within what is already there, that is reacting on the potentials of every zone in itself as it has been during history. And so we draw this map, which is maybe a little bit difficult to see, which shows that some area, for instance Brussels Antwerp, should be a more productive area. Another area should be more focusing on nature, on agriculture, and so on. And so we developed a map of metropolitan territories where we can define for each of the territories its own ambition. So we can find the ambition of the territory. So we try to demonstrate by drawing, by research, by design, how the future of Flanders can be developed as a sustainable territory by sharing and coupling functions, rather than consuming and dividing spaces, as we are doing since more than 100 years now. So instead of planning like this, one thing next to the other, we should more plan like this and combine things, couple things, let housing use heat that is produced by industry, couple things, and it means that this dispersed area that seemed to be very unsustainable in the beginning could become more sustainable exactly because everything is so mixed and everything is a mess. You can more easily couple things and create win-win situations in this field. Just very quickly, we did a copy of the Belgian pavilion on 1.2 scale in the exhibition space in Antwerp, and we put all the material around it in order, because for us this project is a starting point. It's not the project for Flanders. It's an invitation to you, to everybody, to start thinking about this territory and to find concepts and solutions for the future. So we put inside the Belgian pavilion model on 1.2 scale in Antwerp, we put tables and we started inviting students, experts, policymakers to come into this pavilion and debate about these topics, which ended up in a design agenda for Flanders based on all these topics that I have been outing during this presentation. So I suggest, that's it, I suggest that I give the task for the workshop. I explain that to the separate groups in order that we can now move on and don't lose ourselves in an infeasible schedule. So half of the group, I don't know if the group is already divided. Yes. It is?
A and B are going on the floor of the workers, C and D stay here.
Okay. It's A and B, I think.
So A and B stay. Sorry. A and B go on the floor. Group C and D stay here.
And group C and D can first quickly take a coffee in the room next to here, and I prepare the workshop space.